Welcome to the Tuesday call, everyone. Jeff St Laurent here. Got a good number of people on the call. A nice warm Tuesday out here in Boston, at least, and summer is heating up. So it's always good to get a change of pace of weather. That those of you who have the change of seasons. So we just came off Memorial Day weekend, and a lot of good people just sharing some stories about spending some time with family, some downtime. Just even some alone time, which is really cool. And then also just coming in from the private Facebook group and seeing some videos in there for people from Memorial Day. And I always am really inspired by, all of you who are inspiring and helping others change their lives. So just as we start today off, just a little bit of encouragement for everyone who really wants to do coaching full time, who really wants to transition to a full time business. But maybe you're you're stuck for whatever reason, or maybe you're feeling good, but every now and then we have those low points where we can slow down and not be as consistent. And hopefully with what we're going to talk about today and everything that we got going on with the community that we're creating, that you can stay inspired and you can stay moving forward, because really that's the name of the game. So before we get started, just so people know, if you want to check out my all these calls will be recorded, so I put them in the Selling Coaching University, so my website, so you have that, it's sellingcoaching.com, and then if you get there, you can check out the university. So I not only will have this call, I will post them by the end of the week, but I will also be able to, you'll be able to see a bunch of other videos and audio recordings as well. And the whole point of what I do is helping coaches transition to a full-time business, and I really focus on the selling and the marketing aspects, because having done this since 2004, I noticed that's the number one thing that has been helping me, is being able to understand, the selling and marketing aspects, which so many people, are fearful of. And I want to make selling, simple and fun for people. So definitely check out that university. And if you're not already, I think most of the callers right now are in my private Facebook group. But from my website, sellingcoaching.com, right at the top, you can see a link to my private Facebook group, and that's a great place where we can interact with each other, get to know each other a little bit more personal, which is fantastic. And then also, I get a lot of cool things going on, and lately we've been having an ongoing visibility challenge, many of you are aware of, where we're creating videos, basically 30 videos over 91 days. And some of people have already done their 30 videos and they're continuing it on, and others are just starting off. So it's a great mix to get other coaches in there. And I would also urge us all that if you know of other coaches who would benefit from these Tuesday calls, from my private Facebook group, from the university and those recordings, I do a lot of this for free because I want to spread the word, and obviously it's my way of growing my audience of coaches. But I give a lot of valuable information because I want to build a strong audience. I want to build a loyal following, and that's really what we do as coaches. And so I want to role model that as well. But if you know them, please invite them to these calls. Please invite them to the resources that I have, because as you're benefiting, others can benefit as well. So got other people calling in, which is fantastic, and it's just in time to launch into some great content. And we'll go till maybe about 1:15 or so, and then we'll open it up for some questions, answers, comments, or whatever it is you want to share. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is basically how to follow up to get clients. And following up is, we always say, the money's in the follow-up, so to speak, or, that's where you're going to, create your business. Following up is an art. Following up is something that is actually very simple when you clarify it a little bit, but a lot of people, they don't take the time to really understand following up. And following up is really a part of the sales process, And we think about following up is the main objective is, do we have a potential client or not? And can we transition them to basically get paid? And we want to remember, we are in business to help people. So we need to help people in order to get paid. And that's the biggest point of this is you can't help someone if they're not your client. Right? You can help someone like through things that I'm doing, right? You can help them through some free content and things like that. But when they express interest in what you're doing, when they express interest or engage in any part of your process, we want to follow up with people. And this isn't just, I want to make sure I'm clear on, following up isn't just about like getting a potential client, right? Following up could be something with just maybe you made a comment on a post in social media and someone said something back to you, or maybe someone liked something or made a comment in one of your posts or whatever, and you'll follow up with them that way. So two of the major aspects of what we're doing to grow our business as a coach is we're building an audience and then we're engaging with our audience. And so engaging with our audience, that's following up with people. I had a phone call today from someone who downloaded my free report, and it's like, actually, I think she called in. I can see her caller ID right here. She might have just called in, but and for some reason her voicemail, like I didn't get her voicemail till like a week and a half later. I don't know what happened to it, but I got it this morning, and I'm like, I'm gonna call her right up, and I'm gonna message her as well, and make sure that she gets the audio, because I guess one portion downloaded, but she couldn't get the other one to play. So that's following up as well. So it's making sure that we're on top of this. And a lot of people, what I find, having worked with coaches over time, is they don't follow up. And I'm surprised to hear that they just don't follow up. They'll do an event, maybe it's on the phone, maybe it's in person, and they get some contacts and some information, and then they just don't follow up. And I'm like, how could you not follow up? But a lot of people, they don't know what to say. They don't want to bother people. They don't want to intrude with people. And so I'm going to teach you some tips so you don't have to feel like that. But no matter what, we want to make sure that they follow up, especially when they've shown interest. And as I said before, a lot of people don't necessarily come right out there and show interest and say, hey, I would like to talk more about working with you, or I'm interested in learning more about what you do as a coach. That doesn't happen a lot of the time. In fact, sometimes it can be very, very rare. And I always like to say, just imagine it's never going to happen. And I like to use that word never, because it will happen, but it is very rare. So if you don't expect it to happen, then you can't just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to go do an event or do anything for that matter, put a video out there and then just sit back and just wait for all this business to pour in, because it's not going to happen. We've got to be proactive and get out there and engage with people and interact with people. And then when that happens, it's creating a series of follow-ups where initially it's just engaging with them to find that timing of a need that they might have where we could assist them, and then moving from there to maybe a complimentary session if it's appropriate, and then following up from there. Even once they're your client, and I'm trying to show you all these different phases, even once someone has hired you, it's following up with them. I've realized after doing this for so long that even when someone's hired you, they can just drift off. Don't expect your client to just email you. Before I got on the call today, the first thing I do at the beginning of my every week, which Tuesday is the beginning of the week this week for me anyways, and because of the holiday, and it's just like one of the first things I did was made sure all my clients that my paying clients, I want to make sure that, hey, what's going on with your week? For those of you that are on the call, there's a handful of you on the call that are my clients, and you can attest to this because you got an email before this call at some point just saying, hey, how's it going? I know there's a couple of you actually on the call who are considering working with me as well, and we haven't set the complimentary session up. You got an email from me this morning as well just saying, hey, this is fantastic. We're starting to move forward and pick some dates. So, those are things that I talk about that I do as well, but it's making sure that you're following up with your existing clients. You don't want to let them go too long. Sometimes you need, it's not like if they're not in the schedule for whatever reason, it just stay in touch with them. I always tell my clients that, I'm available via email. We can, for support, for accountability, for questions, for whatever, helping them get clients with their email threads, advice on how to follow up with people. But if I don't hear from them, at least by the end of the week or the beginning of the week, whether we have an appointment or not, I'm following up with them. So follow up is a vital phase. It's a vital skill set. It's a vital thing to do, no matter where a person is, whether they've hired you or not. So that's why we want to kind of go over this stuff, because I wanted to outline, why it's so important, but also where it's so important as well. So one of the first things we have to be aware of following up, and it might be like, oh, duh, but like I said, most people don't follow up. So the first thing I'll give you is a tip is follow up, right? And like you're laughing because it's like, whoa, of course, but people don't. So we've got to make sure that we follow up. And once you follow up, the tip is follow up again. And just remember, people are busy. Even if they're interested, you'll find that people need consistent follow-ups. I've followed up with people for years. I remember this one guy, and it's like, every time I say the story, I feel like it's a different number of years, but it was like 5 to 8 years. I was like, I think the longest person I've ever followed up with was 8 years before they hired me. And like with direct follow-ups, like direct email. And it's not like I'm doing it every single week or month, etc. But initially it was that because of an event. And then next thing you know, it's like, yeah, get in touch with me in 6 months, get in touch with me in, a year. And I did that because they expressed genuine interest. And, next thing you know, 5 years later, another person 8 years later, they ended up working with me. That's a great testament to the timing of the sale, meaning people might have a need now, but if the timing's not right, that they might not be ready to move forward with you. So that's why the consistency over time is important. That's also another reason why having an email database is very important, coupled with, let's say, a Facebook group or another type of a group, depending on what social media platform you're in. But at a minimum, email is so important because that's a way of following up. It's a way of being in front of people. You might not think about an email as following up with people. It's a form of following up, but just by you staying in contact with people and letting them know what's going on, giving them some good tips, whether it's written or you're letting them know, hey, I just posted this video, check it out. That's following up with people because you're staying in front of them. So of anything, you've got to actually be able to do it. That's the biggest thing. You might have heard before that, sometimes people need a minimum of 7 follow-ups before they even respond. Even know yourself sometimes that, like if someone needs something from you and, unless it's at the top of your list or an urgent thing, you might not get back to them for a while. And it's not because you're choosing not to, but it's just like maybe there are more important things or priorities, or you just get so much going on, and that's just the reality of it. Sometimes follow-up can feel really slow for us, especially when it's a potential client, because it's like, we'll email them back or we'll respond, and then, like a half day goes by or a day goes by, and you're like, man, they haven't gotten back to me yet. What's going on? Oh, they might not be interested yet. And it's like, oh, geez, it's only been, a day, or it's only been 2 days. It's like, sometimes people need a little bit of time. But we want to make sure we're on top of that. So the first thing is we want to make sure we follow up. Next thing we'll talk about is speed of response. So speed of response means when do we follow up? Following up, we need to follow up right now. The only time is right now. The reason why we follow up right now, or as close to as possible, let's say from when that inquiry comes in, or from when we did that event, or from when the referral happened, is because of the timing piece. The reason why we follow up as soon as possible from when, let's say, someone makes a comment or things like that is because of the timing. If it's something that's an inquiry about like what you do or interested in potentially working with you, or something like you just did an event and you're following up with those people, it's even more vital for you to follow up as close to when that event happened or when that referral happened or when that inquiry happened. All right, so think about it like this, right? If I go to your event and I see you speak, and I'm like, wow, that was fantastic. And let's say we have some correspondence afterwards, whether maybe I gave you my name and email address, I raised my hand, or I talked to you after the event to say, hey, listen, I loved what you did. Even with just like a simple comment, I loved your event, you were fantastic. I connected with the information, even something like that. All right. For me to follow up with you as close to when that happens as possible, the reason why it's so vital is because you don't know where I am in terms of, I came to your event for a reason, meaning something in my life was not where it should be, or where I want it to be, or where I would hope it would be. And based on what you're talking about, my hope was that I'd learn something, that a door of hope would open, where I would get excited, or I'd get some insight where maybe things wouldn't seem so bad, or I can change my mindset, of shift or perspective, so I can begin to move forward with that. And so as a result of this event, odds are, especially if I'm engaging with you in some capacity, or I raise my hand, whether by sending you an email or signing up for something at the event, saying like, yeah, I loved your stuff. All right, that means that something happened for me. Something happened, a breakthrough or a shift of perspective or something. So I want to engage with you to find out what that is, because you have to remember now, I feel hopeful or I feel better after leaving your event. Where am I going now? I'm going back to my world. I go back in my car, and what I do, I turn my phone on, and it's just the world hits me, overwhelm hits me again. My shitty situation hits me again, right? And I'm just like, oh, and I go back into, the further away I go from that event time-wise, the harder things get, the more overwhelmed I become again. And so I either get to think about, like now, me as a buyer, right? I either go back to this overwhelmed place and I'm like, no, I can't have this. So I either proactively reach out to you, or what most people do is they don't necessarily proactively reach out. This is what I've learned after doing this for so long, is people will just buy what's in front of them, or they'll do what's in front of them. So let's say they went to another event and that coach emails them, or another thing pops up, like a course or something like that, their email list. Maybe they'll just end up buying that. Maybe they'll just end up spending money on just useless junk, like a purse or sorry, ladies, or just anything, like just food, or maybe something for the house, or another expensive item that, just a novelty item that they may or may not need, but it's just like they're just avoiding their emotions, right? Or they start doing things that just avoid what they're feeling. And so for you to be able to connect with them sooner than later and say, hey, how is it? I saw that you loved the event. Tell me more about that. What did you receive from the event? What were some of the takeaways, right? We're coaching them, and it could be done via email. We could call them up as well. And just start to engage with them. That's the vital part. Even if it's just a simple inquiry, it's engaging with those people as soon as possible after that. The biggest thing about that speed is that, additionally, is that people nowadays aren't quick with things. They're slow with things. They don't follow up. They don't get back to you on certain things. You call something, or you send something in, or you have a request for something, and it's just like, it takes forever to get people back with you, and sometimes they don't even get back to you at all. So when you're on top of stuff, when you're like really on top of follow-up and even engagement with your group, or what you're doing with your people, people notice that stuff, and they respect that stuff. And when you're engaged, they become more engaged, or they're impressed with that, and they want that, and they need that. And that's showing also your value as a coach, is that you're there and that you care. And they don't have that with a lot of other people. The difference between someone hiring you and someone hiring someone else is speed of response. Like, I can't tell you how many clients I've gotten. I could actually tell you if I really, counted it out, but many, just on social media, in different groups that I'm a part of, where my audience is, meaning same thing for you. If the part of the value of identifying your audience very closely is you know where they are. So you can become a part of those groups or networks or forums, etc. And so when you see people, in need, or asking a question, or needing help, or maybe even wanting to work with someone like yourself, because some people post some of those things sometimes in different formats. When you're on top of that stuff and you respond and you say, hey, listen, hey, here's some information, here's some tips, here's something that could help you by virtue of what you do, especially if you have some great educational content, you can share that with them. That's why I do a lot of this stuff that I do here, is because when I'm in groups and forums and things like that, when people ask specific questions on certain things that, let's say, I feel like I'm an expert in, or I have done some information for them, I can respond with, say, hey, you know what? Great question. I can understand your frustration, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Here I have something I did, a call or a video, or not too long ago, which I feel you could greatly benefit from. If you care to take a look, here's the link. Right? So I'm sharing what I do so you can translate this to what you do, right? This is part of following up, but this is part of giving them some great information so they can become they can become aware of you, and especially if there's a need, again, the timing, everything, the quicker you're on top of that, what you're doing is you're beating other people. When I say beating other people, it's not a race, but what it is it's getting there first and showing up first. And sometimes that's all people need, is you showing up there first. It doesn't mean you have to be there all the time, right? It doesn't mean you have to be on social media and all those places all the time. It just means, especially when you're engaging with your people, it's being prompt on that. And just remember also, a lot of people are doing this part-time and they have a full-time job with this. So it's like, oh, geez, Jeff, maybe it's easy for you because you're doing this full-time, but you know what, I've got to, get up and I've got to do something, or I might, after my event, I might have to go to work the next day for, 8, 10, 12 hours or whatever. So speed of response doesn't have to be like that second or that right afterwards. If possible, yes, do that. But if it's the next day or things like that, or even 24, at the most, maybe 48 hours later, I think it'd be fair to say within 24 hours, you could find 5, 10, 20 minutes to follow up with people, right? Especially if you're looking to transition to full-time and you're serious about it, you can definitely find at least, let's say, 15 to 30 minutes to follow up with people and stay on top of that. I would hope anyways. So it doesn't mean you have to follow up that second, but also knowing, sometimes when I've done events, especially when I travel to do events, as soon as the event's over, if the second I have some downtime, if I'm waiting, to get my plane, or as soon as I get home, it's like I'm sending that stuff out. I'm following up with people. Sometimes I'll do it like if I did an event and then there was another speaker after me and I'm still at the event, I'll be in the back of the room and I'll be like texting and emailing people and following up with them right there at the event. I've gotten a client or two out of that at events where they're sitting in the audience and they come up to me after the next break and they come up to me and they're like, you just got back to me, like, from my inquiry, like, after your talk, like, last hour. I'm like, yeah, I know. So, like, that's impressive. They're like, I need someone like you who's on top of that stuff. I'm like, all right, what do you mean by that? And next thing you know, they hired me. So it's like things like that make a difference, and it shows them who you are and how you roll. And if you're not like this, you want to get like this, because it's not just because, it's because of that timing piece. That's why I really want to highlight that. It's all about the timing. And when people are ready to go, they're ready to go. And if you're not there, and if you're not right in front of them all the time and staying on top of them, they're going to go somewhere else, and you're going to lose them. All right. Another tip for following up is, I would just say, like, find the best method for follow up. Because there's so many days to contact people. The email, texting, phone, Facebook, Skype. There's messaging on Facebook. LinkedIn. There's Twitter. There's all these different social platforms, right? So, what's the best method? Because you might prefer text or you might prefer email, but what do they prefer? So initially, when it comes in, find out where's this inquiry coming from? Like, say people message me on Facebook, for instance, right? So I'll get back to them via Facebook. But then at some point, if we're going back and forth and we're engaging, and if there's some interest, or need where, I might be able to help them further, or this continuous engagement, I prefer to engage on email. Just because of the way I work, and it just works great for me. So at some point I'll ask them and say, hey, listen, I'd love to continue this conversation. Would you mind doing it via email? How does that work for you? And here's my email, and let me know. And some people have said yes, some people are like, oh no, I prefer to do it, Facebook Messenger. And I'm like, okay, I will do it wherever someone's gonna respond. That's the biggest thing, Don't be calling people and leaving them a voicemail when they never listen to their voicemail. Right? You have some friends or family that maybe, your parents, and if they're an older generation, you could text them all day. They don't even know what a text is. Or even if they have text, they might never respond. But if you leave them a voicemail, they'll get back to you right away, or you call them, right? And so that's just a perfect example. So you've got to find that, because you have to remember, like, if people aren't getting back to you, like, well, maybe you're communicating via a method that they don't really ever use. Facebook Messenger is a great example. Every person that, for instance, that joins my Facebook group, I'll approve, I'll check them out, then I'll approve them, I'll friend request them, and then I'll message them, and I have a little thing that say, hey, welcome to the group. How'd you find out about this? Let them, welcome, please welcome yourself. Here's what we got going on. Check out the pinned post, stuff like that. And some people never see that. Whether they just never check Messenger for a long time. I never did Messenger either. So you've got to be aware of that stuff, and that's why when you get people's contact information, especially from like events, for instance, I always love to get at least email and phone, because if you have phone, most likely you have text as well, because most people are giving you their mobile numbers. So now you can call them, you can email them, and you can text them as well. And then if you have their name, you can check on Facebook, which is probably the primary one for most people, depending on the age demographic. And you might even be able to find them on Facebook as well, and then you have that avenue as well. So that's why I always like to get at least at a minimum the email, the phone number, and then their name, because right now I've got at least 3 viable forms of communication, which most likely at least one of those is going to work for them. So find the best method, and that's a vital way of moving forward with that. So another tip for following up is what I would call like seek buying signs. And when you say what are buying signs, these are basically signals from a potential customer where they're saying, either they're literally saying it or maybe kind of secretively hinting towards it or going in that direction, that they want to work with you, that they want to hire you, that they want to buy maybe some of your products and services if you have other ones besides coaching. A lot of times they'll say this on the phone, or they'll write it, or it's very literal, and they'll say, hey, I want to buy your book, or hey, I want to hire you as a coach, or I'm considering working with your coach, or tell me what it takes to work with you as a coach, or how, if I was interested in coaching, what would that be like? Another buying sign is this: someone says, hey, how much does coaching cost? That's a buying sign, right? Why would you ask how much something costs if you're not interested in buying? It doesn't mean that they're interested in buying it right now, but let's parallel this to something completely different, like a television set, right? So something that's probably a little bit more expensive than your average everyday purchase. When are you going to ask, call a store or go to a store or look online and to find out the price of a TV, or walk into Best Buy and be like, how much does that cost? You're pretty close, if not ready to buy at that point. Otherwise, who cares what it costs, right? So these are buying signs. And like I said, some are literal and some are a little bit less literal. And even when someone says, oh, I loved what you did, I enjoyed listening to your material, I love what you do, things like that. Those are potential buying signs, because they like what you do, and there's a reason why, right? Especially as a coach, you have to remember there's a reason why they like what you do. It's because you're helping them with something. And if you're helping someone with something, what that means is that something in their life, is at a place where they need help with, and they're seeking help for something. That's why they took the time to attend your event, read what you wrote, watch your video, whatever that you're doing. So I'm trying to get you to think a little bit deeper is, anytime there's some type of common interaction there, there's a reason behind it. And what we're great about as coaches is we're great about uncovering that, aren't we? We're by objectively being there for them, not having an agenda, and allowing them to hear beyond just their words and what's going on. And as we start to do that, what we do is we uncover and we seek out those buying signs, because if something's not right and they're seeking help for it, and the timing is now, then hey, this is something that we could be working with them on. So when it comes to seeking out buying signs, we have to be aware of these buying signals, because it allows us to ask them further questions like, hey, listen, I noticed that you said this. And it seems like you're going through a challenging time right now, or it seems as if you're working on something. Tell me a little bit more about that. And so these questions that they have, or even if they are direct in saying, hey, considering working with your coach, or how much does coaching how much does it cost to coach with you? These aren't questions that you actually answer. They're questions that are signs where you want to find out more about that. And it's like, I'd love to tell you about that. I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more about why you're asking. If someone says, how much does coaching cost, right off the bat, or after the event, or at a networking event, it's like, I'd love to tell you about that. Tell me a little bit more about why you're asking, or why do you want to know how much it costs? What are you working through in your life, or where are you at in your life where this might have an interest to you? Start opening that up a little bit and uncovering some of those needs. That's where we want to go A lot of coaches get caught up into answering questions. Like, for the best question is well, what do you do? Tell me more about coaching, right? When someone asks that, that's a potential buying sign. Like, it doesn't mean they're going to buy. What it means is we've got to clarify and understand what do those comments mean. So eventually, are they buying signs, or are they just curiosity, or are they just trying to make small talk because they don't know what else to say, like if you're at a networking event or whatever. But we got to clarify some of those things. And so don't get seduced and caught up into answering the questions of how much it costs and what do we do as a coach. Because that's when coaches get nervous. So like, well, how do I answer the question, how much does it cost? We don't want to give them the cost right away because we have to understand that the money isn't important. It's important to a certain degree, but it's never about the money. It's about how bad they want something. Because when people want something bad enough, they go after it and they'll find a way to do it. Coaching isn't unreasonable. We're not asking ridiculous fees for what we do as a coach. We're professionals, and people buy and hire professionals to do things. They'll hire a professional plumber to come into their home and maybe $150 an hour to fix a pipe, right? Do they want to do that? No, but if the pipe's leaking and it's putting a hole in the ceiling and causing whatever, right? There's value there, so they pay it, right? If their life's in a position where it's, let's say, not good enough, or they're really looking to take something to the next level, and you're in front of them and they see the value in working with you, $100 to $200 for a session of working with you isn't unreasonable. Right? That's what we have to start to understand. Yes, it's a lot of money when there's no need there. I'm not going to go pay a plumber $150 an hour or whatever it's going to be to come to my home if I have no plumbing issues, right? So same thing with a coach. If there's no issues, that's why we got to find out, what's going on in their world. So when they ask any types of questions like this, we want to start to engage a little bit more, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit. Or, well, it sounds interesting, or it sounds like you're going through a lot right now. I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more about that, or I'd love to hear what's happening. That's our curiosity, and where we open them up a little bit more. So more tips on following up, and then we'll start to open the call up a little bit here. Is one of the things I'll say is the tip is, I'll call it get the answer. And what that means is, at the end of the day, especially when you're taking someone through a process and following up with people, let's say from wherever they're coming in from, like an event or referral, etc., and whether they want to have a complimentary session or not, or whether they want to hire you or not. Getting the answer means, and the part of the following up is, we're looking for a yes or a no. And sometimes as coaches, we're in the coaching process, we're taught to ask open-ended questions, right? We're saying, don't ask a yes or no question. Ask, who, what, when, where, why, how, and that elicits thought. It elicits, elaboration versus, do you want to hire me or not? Are you ready to move forward or not? That's a yes or a no answer. Once we start engaging them in dialogue through any method, phone, email, text, whatever, it could be multiple correspondences. At some point, we're looking for them to decide yes or no. In other words, are they interested in taking that next step? Meaning, do they want to buy the book? Do they want to hire you as a coach? Do they want to have a complimentary session? You know what I mean? Yes or no. We've got to get to that step. And a lot of coaches are so afraid of that because they're so afraid of the no. And I love to tell people, pursue the no, go after the no, and even more than the yes. Because when you pursue the no, meaning them saying, no, I'm not interested, when you allow them that, meaning saying, hey, listen, I'm okay if you say no. I'm okay if if you're not interested at this time. I'm okay with that. I just want to help you to create a decision. I want to help you to create a intelligent decision whether you want to move forward with me or not. That's where we want to go. That's what I mean by pursuing the no. And when we were vocal about it and letting them know, hey, it's okay with me if you say no, give them permission to say it, it takes a lot of that pressure off. And now it's like, I'm not here to force you to say yes. I'm just here to say, hey, listen, you came to me and you said you were interested in this, or you're considering attending my event, or you're considering working with me as a coach. We had a complimentary session, or, I engage with you and talk to you about this. Are you interested in moving forward or not? Yes or no? If you are, let's do this. Let's move forward with this. If not, you know what? I'm happy to, have you on your way. We can stay in touch via email and go like that. Which works best for you? that's so vitally important. We've got to get the answer from them, because the last thing we want is, maybe I'll think about it. I don't know. I got a lot going on in my life right now. Geez, I don't really know. And like a lot of if words, like if, maybe, I think, possibly, it just leaves us in this hanging place, right? And it's not a good place to be, because we don't know, I just want to find out, if they're interested or not. And if they're not interested, let them go. Like I said, get that yes or no. The worst thing is to be in the middle, because you don't really know what's going on. So if they say, like, I need to think about it, and say, okay, well, I could follow up with you on that. I'm happy to follow up with you, but let me ask you, what is it that you need to think about, right? Clarify what they're saying to you. Like, yeah, you know what? Let me run this by the spouse. Let me run this by my husband. Let me run this by my wife a little bit, and I'll get back to you. Saying, okay, I can appreciate that. Well, let me ask you this. I'm curious. What are you going to talk with them about? What's going to go on, or what are some of the things that you want to discuss with them? I'm curious. Do you feel they're supportive? Just talk about some of those things. Bring those things up open and honestly. If they say, I need to think about this or run this by whoever, and, I'll get back with you. It's like, okay, I can appreciate that. When do you think you might get back with me? Like, get them to be specific. We've got to get people down to specifics of, like, well, when? Like, well, how much time do you feel you need to think about this? I'm curious, what is it that you're thinking about? I can tell you have some unanswered questions. I can tell you're hesitating a little bit. And let me ask you, what is that about? Or, but just between you and I, when someone says, I need to think about it, they'll hang up the phone and they join the witness protection program, and I never hear from them again. The person laughs, and then you're like, so, I'm happy to let you go, but I'm just curious, what are you thinking about, or what's going through your head? I want to get down to that. And if you could see, I'm trying to give you ways and methods that I'm not badgering someone. I'm not making them decide. I'm just kind of being like, hey, listen, I can appreciate where you are, and I can tell you need to think about stuff, but, you and I both know that, if you're going to hang up the phone, you're going to walk away, or it's like, well, what do you really need to think about? Get it out in the open. Those are the biggest things. It helps people to an answer. And then lastly, in terms of following up, and then we'll open up the call, is ending with a plan. So like the worst thing you want to do is, whether it's an email correspondence or, a phone conversation, especially when you're, moving to a complimentary session, or especially afterwards, and they're like, they need to think about something or whatever, is not knowing what the next step is. And this can be the hardest part about following up, is if you don't do this step, then you're guessing. So in other words, ending with a plan means, great, you need to think about this, and maybe I tried some of the other stuff I talked about, and they're just like, yeah, I just need a little bit of time. And that's fantastic. So when can I expect to hear from you? Or how do you want to proceed? Or how much time do you feel you want to think about this before we can follow up again? So I'm a big advocate of not trying to figure stuff out and guess, but like just ask. And ask the person, right? We're a coach. We're not the expert. Like, they're running the show. And the more you ask and you allow that person to take the direction, the more empowered they feel, and the more in control they have of the situation, and the less pressure they feel, when in reality, we have complete control over the situation, because we're asking them, hey, when can I expect to hear from you? How would you like me to follow up with you? Right? We have control over it because we're getting the answer we need, and we're also getting permission when to do it, but they feel like they have all the control because they're giving you the answers. And if they're being vague, that's a sign that there's really maybe not much interest there, or there's not much engagement. And those are clues to kind of clarify a little bit more. So if someone's like, they need to think about it, I'm like, that's fantastic. I'm like, I can appreciate that. So let me ask you, like, how would you like me to follow up with you? Or when would you like me to follow up with you? They're like, well, no, I'll follow up with you. I'm like, okay, great. Can I ask, when can I expect to hear from you? It's especially after a complimentary session, or someone's expressed interest in working with you or not, we have the right to ask, well, when could I expect to hear from you? If I don't hear from you, would it be okay if I followed up with you in a certain time frame? We want to be specific like that, because you don't want to have to guess. And so if someone says like, yeah, you know what, I need time to like maybe the end of the week. And I'm like, okay, great. So end of the week meaning Friday? Like, yeah, great. So you're going to get back to me on Friday. And if is that true? Yes. Right. And if I don't hear back from you on Friday, would it be okay if I followed up with you? Absolutely. Great. So listen, let me ask you before you go, what do you feel is going to happen this week? Or, what's going to go on over the next few days where, what do you hope to follow up with me? Or what can I anticipate you following up with me on Friday? Like I'm trying to give different scenarios and different questions, but any insight you can get from them at that point, like I always like to do that because this is like most likely the last opportunity you have to really speak with them before they go away. And if you don't clarify some of these things or really understand where they're at, then you're never going to understand this. And the biggest thing you want to clarify is making sure that you understand that they are genuinely interested. And I always like to get down to that last point in a follow-up is, especially if I've given a complimentary session and they didn't hire me at that point, and I just want to find out and say, listen, you know what, I get a feeling like you're a little bit hesitant to move forward, or maybe you're really not that interested in working with me. How true is that? Or, is that true? Get it out of them. Get that no out of them. And if they really want to do something with you, what's going to happen is they're going to say, no, I really am interested, or no, I really do. I am going to get back to you. I just like to process things. And so that's where you want to get that out of them. Because now you can feel good about following up with someone. I will follow up with someone for years. Like those people at the beginning of the call that I said that I followed up with for 5 years, 8 years, and they ended up hiring me. Is the reason I followed up with someone like, for instance, that long, other than let them just being on my email list, for instance, was because at each engagement point, where at the end of the conversation, I made sure that can you follow up with me again in 6 months, or can you follow up with me next week, or earlier in the relationship. At each point before I said yes, what I learned to do is to clarify interest, meaning I will follow up with you till I bleed, right? And I've said this before, like, listen, I will follow up with you till I bleed. I just wanted to make sure that you're genuinely interested in potentially working with me. I just want to make sure that you're genuinely interested in whatever it is that they're interested in. And I will follow up with you as long as you want me to. But if you're not interested, I would just respect it if you told me now. That's how I like to roll. And when you do that with people, they're honest with you. It's like, listen, I will do this. I will follow up with you. It's what I do. It's what I do as a coach. It's how I help people, hold them accountable and move them forward. But I just need to know that you are genuinely interested, that you genuinely want this. Because if you don't, I'm okay with that, and I'm happy to let you go. Just please let me know where you're at. And people always come up with the truth at that point. And that's a vital piece. So where we're not just pretending to follow up with people, pretending to have leads, pretending, oh my God, I got all these interested people. It's like, do you really? Oh yeah, I'm following up with all these people. They're interested. They said they were interested. And yet you keep following up with them and you never hear back from them, or you never really get down to asking these questions. And you're kind of like investing a lot of time and mostly wasted energy of excitement that never really follows through. And then you keep getting disappointed when no one's hiring you and no one's working with you or no one's getting back to you. It's because you're not taking the time to do a lot of the things I talked about on the call today. And so those are some of the key elements of following up. And if you notice, a lot of it is coaching. A lot of it is clarifying and uncovering really where a person's at. And that's selling. All selling really is just understanding where a potential person is in their mindset. Are they a potential client, or are they just someone who's interested in knowing more about you or what you do? It's like, until we start clarifying and understanding that with each person that we engage with, we're going to be guessing as to where people are. And that's bad for us because, we want clients, we want business. And if we're eluded by, inquiries but never really get down to what's really going on and what they're really feeling or thinking, then we're fooling ourselves into thinking that we have business when we really don't. And like I said, that's the worst thing that can happen to us.